Hi gang, Scott here, back for another round of the do-over project. This look back at some of the images I took in the Oregon coast in the 2016-2017 time frame, and revisiting them, going through and doing a fresh edit on them and sharing the results with you. Check out the first video that's got the kind of a little more of the background and how I'm approaching these things. And the photo I'm about to show you here is the photo I took in Brookings, Oregon. This was the final image from back in 2016 as processed, and I like the image for sure. Wonderful sunrise, good action in the waves, but I wanted to revisit this and take a fresh crack at the editing, because certain things, I don't know, just things felt a little soft, maybe a better balance between crispness and softness, and I wanted to explore that again. So I'm going to turn over into Lightroom and walk you through the various steps that I applied there, as well as some edits in ON1 Effects, and then we'll look at the side-by-side of the 2016 edit with the 2023 edit. So let's get into it. This is the original raw photo, straight out of camera. What you would expect right around sunrise, a very high dynamic situation, a lot of brightness out where the sun's coming up behind the rocks at the left, a lot of shadow in the foreground. So first up was typical stuff, the spots in the crop just to clean things up, straighten the horizon, tighten up a little bit, then into the basics. So we see that the most dramatic change happens right there. Basics were, well, basic. Adobe Landscape, custom white balance, so picking some of the whitewash in the surf to get something a little less cool. That warmed it up quite a bit. Auto button, some fundamentals here. I think the vibrance and saturation came from the auto button itself. But this is a decent start. There's still more to do. Right? So next up was HSL, and we'll see that the sky got a little darker. Before there was basic, and this was really just targeting the blues. So we take a look at that HSL, and doing a classic thing, a little bit more saturation of the sky, a little bit of darkening. So we're getting some richer tones here up in the sky. Still, decent, but the overall photo is still not well balanced. So next is foreground exposure. So we'll see that foreground open up. And now I'm getting a look at that ocean, those nice, smooth looking water waves there. That's a mask. So here is, the foreground exposure, and very straightforward. Just a raise on the exposure, a gradient right there. Nothing else, no fancy masking there. But then we get into rocks and detail, and we'll see those other two masks pop up. And so this may be a little more difficult to see. Let's take a look at this rock right over here. And as I get into the rock details, you can see what I'm masking here and here. So before, after, hard to see. Before, after, much more obvious, right? We can see those two changes adding up. So what's going on here? First is the rock detail. This is the luminance range into the shadows, and doing exactly that, adding texture, adding clarity. Let me zoom back out, and before and after, we can kind of see it more over here. So if I zoom to this rock right here, before, after, right? We can see that there, but it certainly wasn't enough. The rock tone was to bring it forward even more, before and after, just to have those things show up more. I still want them silhouetted somewhat, but I don't want them to be completely dark like they were. They are important features of the photo. Now into the whitewash. So we're going to bring the whitewash up. Notice that gets brighter. This is another masking job, right? Here's our whitewash. How are we doing this? Luminance range intersected with a linear gradient. Because here's the gradient. The luminance range is really the midtones. Just took a sample point out in the whitewash, and then intersected again with a color range. Now notice the color range is this blue-ish tone, but with the luminance being in the middle and the color range being blue. So I'm having mid-tone blues and then a gradient to say, don't do anything up in the sky. That all adds up to a mask like this. And that's how we're getting this this pop in those whitewashes. And I noticed that there's, a little bit out in the sky there, but it really didn't matter. I don't really notice too much of a change there. There's a tiny bit of brightness there. It didn't introduce any halos or things like that. So it's like, I'm good with this. I don't have to go and do any additional masking. I like it when I don't have to reach for the brush. I am getting lazier and lazier with my masking insofar as I prefer to use range masks or gradients and just lace them together. Okay, next up is darkening the clouds. So watch the upper left corner, for example. Just a little nudge, right? Before, after. Once again, you're going to see variations on a theme. Luminosity, mask, coupled with a linear gradient to target things just up to these dark clouds. This could have also been select the sky and then do a luminance range mask. I mean, there's a variety of ways you can combine these together to target these tones in the sky. That's just how I chose to do it. And it's a tiny bit of darkening and deepening of the shadows. All right, foreground color cast. I got to this point, I'm still like, the foreground still seems kind of blue. So nudged it away ever so slightly. I mean, this is a tiny one. Before, after, that may or may not come through on the video. I notice it most in this center section here. So like watch where the sun rise is reflecting off of the water. Before, after, tiny bit, really tiny nudge. And it is just the slightest of slight changes. I think it was in the curve somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So I was looking at the sliders, they're all flat. This tiniest change to reduce blues, adding in a little bit of yellow with the curve, and even that was dialed back from the amount slider. Here's the full amount versus, that's even going to be too subtle. You're not going to be able to see that one. But really soft nudge using the curve and not just using the temperature slider, because the curve gives me that push and pull between blue and yellow with the blue curve, and it can be targeted to particular tones, in this case, the midtones. So, wonderful that the curve is available in the masking areas now. That was the foreground color cast. And then I went, and let me zoom back out here. And so, I'm a sucker for the twilight look, and so this is like adding more purplish tones to it. So before and after, I know myself. I'm just attached to this purple type of tone. So if we look at that particular mask for the twilight curve, where did it go? Let's get that here. Open this up. Maybe I did this globally. This might be a global curve change. Yes, it was, because it was across the whole photo. We don't need masks anymore. This was the global tone curve. Normally I'm using the tone curve at the beginning in the grayscale mode, but here I was doing it for some color. And I've done videos on this before. It's a little tiny nudge up on reds, a little tiny nudge down on green, so adding magenta, and a little tiny nudge up on blue. So I am kind of countering some of the foreground work here. But in this arena, I'm trying to do it for an overall color tone before and after. And the previous one was more to correct a cast. So it's probably kind of cancel out. But when they're added together with this twilight look, I like the look on the photo. And that's ultimately what matters. It's not so much about, which slider did I push. Certainly, why did I push those sliders? But most important, what's it look like on the photo? So I was pretty happy with it in Lightroom from here, and then it took it over into Effects to finish it up. So let me bounce this over into Effects, and I'll show you the steps that I used there to finish things off. All right, in Effects, 3 filters. If you watch the other do-over videos, you're going to recognize these. First up, dynamic contrast. And let's open that up and take a look at it. What are we doing here? Standard dynamic contrast, but notice the mask. The mask is quite intricate. I view that. It looks like a photo negative. This is starting off by inverting the mask, so I'm targeting the shadows, and then played around with the levels. Really what I'm after here, if I turn off the view, I want to add more dynamic contrast into the darker areas of the photo. That's going to be the rocks, these big ones, the small ones in the foreground, some of the beach, and then taper it off. Some of the midtones, we saw that curves adjustment before in the midtones here, adding some of that that dynamic contrast in, and the net result before, after, you're going to notice it most in the rocks. I want those rocks to be crisp. I want the rest of the photo to be softer, and really almost nothing in the sky. It's very, very muted in the sky. A little bit of an addition with these clouds here, before, after, but just a touch. Next is the color enhancer. Let's open this one up, turn this one on. This again is my overlay blend mode pop, right? There's that overlay blend mode, low. But notice again a mask. Why did I do the mask this time? So here's what the mask looks like, and I'm not doing the overlay pop out in the background there, or the background, the edges. So before the change, watch here in the photo, right here in the center. After, it's just something extra, it's something richer. But the reason for the mask, if I reset the mask, notice how much darker the edges got. Undo. Back to my masked one. Reset the mask. Things just got a little dark. And I'll undo that again. And so I didn't want that additional overlay pop on there because the last filter, I knew I would be adding a vignette, and I wanted the vignette to be, covering the whole of the surround here and not be more driven by tone. And what I mean by that, the overlay mode works with the different tones in the image to do some calculations, do some math, and shadow areas and very bright areas can get more impact. Well, in this photo, when I look around the edges, I have some pretty deep shadow areas. I don't have a lot of bright highlights, right? The bright highlights are in the center here. So, added a vignette, and quite a low one, right? It's very subtle, before and after. Just enough to push into this nice area that was enhanced with that color enhancer overlay pop. And so those things all added up in effects before, after, that yielded the final for the 2023 edit. And so now I want to go look at these two side by side, 2016, 2023. What did I do different? And which one do I prefer, or why? So let's take a look. All right, so here's our side by side comparison. On the left is the 2016 edit. On the right is the 2023 edit we just walked through. Certainly leaned in to the twilight look here a lot more. And I have to say, I still do really like the rich blues and purples in this photo on the left. So if I were to choose a sky, I'd probably want to take this sky here. But the darkening I did in this cloud, it's like, I want that here. I'm already kind of at the point where there's certain things I like about my original edit more and certain things I like about the new edit more. I definitely like the warmth here and the warmer tones that ended up in the ocean reflection. Like this, pairing here just feels better to me. I also did better this time around with targeted crispness on the rocks. I mean, this one in the foreground, but also particularly the one at the side here. That probably will hold true for the side over here. This is just better detailed. And now I'm looking at it zoomed in 100%. I mentioned I didn't see a halo. I kind of see a very slight one there. So that mid-tone adjustment where there was some cleanup here to do, it looks like I got to go clean that up. So I'm going to go take care of that after I'm done recording the video here. Other things that are notably different is the retouching or lack thereof. Let's zoom in on this lump of seaweed. I did not try to tackle this here, and you can see it's like so-so. This is not a particularly good retouching. Now, I know my skills have gotten better, but a challenging thing with this particular removal is because of the drifts of sand. Now, I know that some of the beta things that are going on in Photoshop would probably say, oh yeah, great, no problem, I can take this away. And it would even probably try to rebuild some of those sand trails. Then the problem becomes, well, why are those sand trails there? If the ocean, came and ebbed out around something and created these lines, well, where's the thing that the ocean went around? So there'd be a bit of a disconnect there. So, in the end, between some challenges in removing some of these things and the fact that if I got rid of this, well, then I have an unexplained, bit of trail here. I really need to retouch away all of this stuff. I might go revisit that once Photoshop's out of beta. I tend not to run beta software on the main system here. It's just I'm not that guy anymore. I don't do the beta software work as much as I used to, and certainly not on my main system. So that's something that's different. Looking at the beach too, I do like in the newer edit that I kept the beach a little darker. This did open up quite a bit. The foreground's opened up quite a bit. I don't know. I'm leaning more toward I like that darker beach. It's more of an offset and more of a contrast with the sweep of the water. But if I had to, really, probably what I'd want to do here is almost splice these together. I still do like that richer part of the blues there. So maybe revisit this bit of the sky, deepen it somewhat, and perhaps a little more of a purplish hue to the sky itself, at least for like these wispy areas of the clouds. I like that purple kiss that's there. That's just that's really inviting. Again, I know myself well enough. I'm a sucker for that particular color palette. But that's the edit, and I'm gonna go clean up this little bit of pseudo haloing I'm seeing there to make sure that's really not going to be a problem. But I hope you enjoyed the video and picked up a few tips of your own that you can apply to your photos, and maybe give you a little inspiration to go back and revisit one of your older images, give it a fresh walkthrough. Improvements in the tools make things easier. I certainly spent less time on this edit than I did in 2016, and predominantly because the masking tools have just gotten so much better in the 6 to 7 years since the first edit. Anyway, that's going to do it. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. Got questions? Drop them below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.